This is Steve Saltwick. Welcome to Your Brain, a Personal Tour Seminar 4. Today we talk about the neurogenesis of human culture, with a focus on primate foundations. We'll talk about the path that Mother Nature took to evolve the human brain from our nearest evolutionary ancestors. That's a complex path, spanning fruit trees to the chanting of the Buddha phrase we just heard. 3 major milestones stand out. First, the evolution of your brain amazingly depended on the ability of primates to efficiently forage for fruit in trees. That's an amazing capability, but it also sets the stage for compulsive gambling. Second, the evolution of your brain depended on the ability of our primate ancestors to forage concepts like ripe fruit. That's a beneficial capability, but it also sets the stage for tragic human disorders. For example, where loved ones cannot recognize the face of one another. And third, the evolution of your brain depended on advanced social cognition, our ability to cope with the social aspects of our environment. That's an advantageous capability, but it also sets the stage for autism spectrum disorders. Our brains could not have evolved without these 3 fundamental capabilities. So as the subtitle states, chanting Nembutsu, the Buddha phrase we just heard, was not possible before our ancestors learned to eat fruit in a tree. Welcome to the seminar. I hope you enjoy it. We begin with a sculpture which embodies a stereotype. This sculpture was cast in the 13th century to commemorate the itinerant priest Kuya. Kuya lived in the 10th century and innovated a 6-syllable chant of the Buddha, called Nembutsu. The 6 syllables of the phrase are represented by the little Buddhas coming out of Kuya's mouth. Repeating Nembutsu was thought to build merit and help you in reincarnation. So think about that. The statue, the workmanship, the philosophy of the phrase and its meaning. Could one of our primate ancestors conceived and made such a thing? I think not. However, appreciating this outstanding work of art is not the same as the stereotypical thought that animals in general, and primates in particular, do not possess advanced skills. The hubris of this stereotype has been exposed by recent research. Let's take a look. Statements about the unique human capabilities usually center around a few main themes. The first is that animals don't have the necessary brain circuits to recognize tools and use them as extensions of their body. Or maybe a few animals can use tools, but only animals with big brains. Another theme is that animals have no cultural transmission system. They don't have kindergartens or schools. They have no way of indoctrinating the next generation into the skills of the current. Probably the most prevalent is that animals have no real use of language. Animal research has shown that all of these themes are false. Animals clearly do have the capabilities to do these kinds of things, and they often do so in the wild. Let's look at a few examples. Here's a troop of chimpanzees in Africa using pliable limbs taken from trees to poke and then withdraw termites from mounds. Termites are a delectable source of protein for chimpanzees, and chimps are quite adept at using tools such as these. But chimps aren't the only species capable of using such tools. Let's go to the ocean. This porpoise is going to use a sponge to protect its nose. Porpoises delight in finding fish at the bottom of oceans in crevices such as this. But they have very sensitive noses, so they'll pull a sponge off the bottom and cover their nose as they search for fish. Some will say, okay, only big-brained animals like chimps and porpoises can use skills, not other members. Let's go to an animal then that has a bird brain, the crow. This dude is a member of a murder of crows in Japan that roost above pedestrian crosses, drop nuts into traffic, and then swoop down and eat the cracked nuts, but only when the crossing light has stopped traffic. This guy has a PhD in nutcracking. Finally, let's take a look at a cultural transmission system. Meerkats are not just cute, they operate kindergartens. This mother meerkat is incapacitating a scorpion in order for her young pup to complete his scorpion eating lesson. The mother meerkat will assay the level of expertise of the pup and then increasingly allow the scorpion to have more and more function as the pup learns to handle it. At first, the mother will completely bite off the stinger, then she'll partially disable it, and then finally, on graduation solo, the pup will face a completely alive and awake scorpion. Now, let's take a quick look about language. I'd like to introduce a famous speaker of language, Alex the parrot. Alex was not only a good speaker, he could plead. Upon being dropped off at a veterinarian's office, Alex said, "Come here, I love you. I'm sorry, want to go back." Alex was trained for 30 years by Dr. Irene Pepperberg. She used a model rival training routine. In this routine, Alex observed Irene and a human assistant modeling a behavior. He would get attention from Irene by imitating the desired behavior. Alex started verbally correcting miscommunications between the two humans, and voila, a famous parrot was discovered. Alex could name 50 different objects, recognize quantities up to 6, distinguish 7 colors and 5 shapes. Alex understood the concepts of bigger, smaller, and same, different. He had the intelligence of a 5-year-old and the emotional level of a 2-year-old, which showed in his pleading behavior. He was famous enough to be accorded an obituary in The Economist, and you don't get more famous than that. He clearly was an outstanding example of how animals can use language. But note that gray parrots don't speak like this in the wild. Alex was trained for 30 years. So we have to remember that even though the capability of language may be in some animals' brain, the actual demonstration of the behavior may not appear in the wild. But with all due respect, animals can't and don't do ninbutsu. For all the awesome capabilities in animals, we have never found an instance of animals creating a statue like Kuya. No concert has been conceived by an animal to rival Bach. No painting to rival Da Vinci. There really is something unique that happens in the evolution of a human brain, and the foundations of that uniqueness are what we're going to investigate next. If we look at an evolutionary diagram of the human brain, we see that it passes through primates with many different branches. We see that the brain changes in fairly complex ways. Some areas of the brain get larger, some more compact. A good way to visualize this is shown here. Here we map the evolution of a primate brain, a macaque, to a human brain. The more yellowish the color in this diagram, the more the brain has expanded between the macaque brain and a human brain. Some areas have grown by a factor of 32. Two areas that we'll talk about today are the prefrontal cortex, that's the part of your brain in the front, and the inferotemporal cortex, that's on the side of your brain by your ears. The prefrontal cortex sets your brain apart from its ancestors. This diagram maps the percentage of brain represented by the prefrontal cortex relative to the total surface of your frontal lobe. The human brain is off the chart. This part of your brain, and to some extent all of the yellow areas shown on the left, are essential in the evolution of human culture. Let's take a closer look. Our question is what? What is so special about the expanded part of the primate brain? Do these areas underpin a host of new mental capabilities, or do they represent just a few fundamental new skills? And if just a few skills, then how does that set the stage for human culture? In my opinion, these two areas represent only two fundamental new ecological skills, which allow the exploitation of one new ecological niche, the forest canopy. The behaviors necessary to exploit this new niche were significantly different than those of the ancestors of primates. Let's take a look at rats, focusing on eating behavior. How does a rat eat? Let's take a look. Here's a rat consuming a bit of food. Notice how the food is consumed. His paws grab a piece of the food on the ground, lift it to its mouth, and then chew. Very boring. Now, let's take a look at a primate in the forest canopy. In this environment, there's no stable earth. The animal is perched on a branch, which can then move relative to the food he's attempting to consume. There are complex spatial relationships of the three-dimensional arrangement of objects, of other animals, fruit, and branches. It's quite a challenge to consume food in these environments. Once you've found it, the capabilities underpinned by these expanded areas of the brain allow primates to exploit this wonderful new niche, and that set the stage for the evolution of human culture. We said the exploitation of this new ecological niche required several different kinds of capabilities. Thousands of pages have been written about what those capabilities entail, but I think the best way to summarize them simply is to say that those expanded areas of the brain provided skills to 1, efficiently forage, and 2, to form more effective social groups. This picture tells it all. Here's a troop of macaques in the middle of a tropical forest about to forage for food. They're doing so in a social group, and please note that there's an in group and an out dude. This set of behavior underpins the march to human culture. Foraging is no walk in the park. A monkey's troop home range may have something on the order of 100,000 trees. 4% of those trees may be ripe at any one particular time. The fruit in such a range is highly clustered. 60% might be in one site, which might be 1 or 2 trees, 0% in others. 2 fruits could look the same, but one could be toxic and one could have great protein benefit. Foraging is also done at daylight, so it can be dangerous. Foragers are exposed to predators. They compete with other primate groups. Chimpanzees are renowned for eating other monkeys, so one must be careful which trees to visit and one must be aware of who is in those trees. There's a complex relationship to the home group size. The larger the group, the better the search. However, large groups are more expensive compared to smaller groups where there would be less internal competition and more food would be available for one particular monkey. The expanded parts of the primate brain had a lot to do with this. Foraging, in my opinion, can be broken down into 4 essential capabilities signified by the pictures on this slide. Beginning with the picture on the left, recall that the distribution of fruit in a typical home range is very patchy. Different kinds of fruit ripen at different times. Different kinds of fruit have differential protein benefit. A monkey troop beginning its daily foraging walk must evaluate several kinds of future outcomes, and that is one of the capabilities in the expanded areas of the brain. If you look at the next picture to the right, you'll see 2 different kinds of fruit. These fruits look completely different. They taste completely different, but they have one thing in common. They ripen at the same time. A monkey troop encountering one of these fruits will immediately expand its search pattern to fruits of both types. That means their brains have mastered the abstract category of ripe fruit. The next picture shows a typical path of a foraging group as it approaches a good tree. When monkeys forage, they tend to focus on particular trees. They will bypass some trees with fruit on them to get to a preferred source of fruit. That means the brain areas that are capable of focusing attention on a future goal several steps away. Then finally, monkeys, when they find a good tree, will exploit the fruit on that tree for only a certain period of time. So they have a strategy to deal with a successful encounter of a fruit tree. However, monkeys must also have strategies to deal with the unexpected arrival of an aggressive competitor. The expanded areas of the brain have the capability of supporting such behaviors, sticking with exploiting the fruit on a tree for a certain amount of time, then shifting to a different tree. Can we find cells in the brain whose behavior map to these foraging behaviors? The answer is yes, we can. Let's start with strategies. When a monkey finds a fruit-laden tree, the strategy that's typically expressed in behavior is to look for other trees with the same type of fruit. So this is a strategy of sticking with the current behavior. Keep on searching for the same type of fruit. However, if something unexpected happens, like a very aggressive monkey troop searching for the same type of fruit, the monkey will shift their behavior and look for different types of fruit. Can we find neurons in the brain that do that? Yes. We can't record from a monkey in a tree, but we can model the behaviors in the lab. Here are records of neurons in a primate brain that reflect a strategy to stay with the current behavior or shift to some other kind of behavior. The recordings are from the front part of the brain. The middle neuron is a stay strategy neuron. This neuron indicates that the monkey will repeat the behavior that was successful in the past. The shift neurons are shown on either side. The shift strategy neurons indicate that the monkey will do a behavior other than the behavior in the past. These kinds of cells directly underpin the kinds of behaviors we see in foraging, and they are a clear indication that this part of the brain can deal with higher order concepts like strategies, staying with a working behavior, or shifting to some other kind of alternate behavior. To see the functioning of this part of the brain in human behavior, it's instructive to observe what happens when this part of the brain is damaged by stroke or by the removal of cortex to treat epileptic seizures. Gambling is a behavior that shows dramatic effects when these areas are damaged. There's a standard way to study gambling. It's called the Iowa Gambling Task. Subjects are presented with 4 decks. 2 of the decks, we'll say B and D, have high payouts, but pay out very infrequently. The other 2 decks, A and C, pay out less, but they pay out fairly consistently. Winnings over time will be much better with decks A and C compared to decks B and D. Subjects with no brain area gravitate over time to the A and C decks. However, if this part of the brain is damaged, we see 2 behaviors develop. The first is persistence in a losing strategy. Even though the subject reports knowing that B and D decks pay out infrequently, they will not shift to use the other deck. They're stuck in a losing strategy. In essence, they don't have the capability to shift when conditions warrant. The second behavior is a sudden abandonment of a winning strategy. For example, playing decks A and C. People with damage to the prefrontal cortex should not be allowed to get close to gambling tasks. They have a distinct challenge to orienting their behavior based on future or predicted outcomes. Another aspect of foraging behavior is the valuation of future outcomes. When a monkey finds a good tree with fruit on it, the natural indication is to pig out on that tree. However, since fruit is distributed in a patchy manner, fruits vary in protein benefit, competitors may be closing in, etc., there is a value to switching from that particular tree to another tree at a certain point. That's shown in this diagram on the right. As the monkey is exploiting a tree, there is a declining value of staying there and a rising value of switching. A kind of economic analysis goes on in terms of driving behavior. It turns out we can find cells in the prefrontal cortex whose activity exactly mimic this kind of observed behavior. There's an area in the prefrontal cortex that increases its activity over time that drives a switching strategy. Notice this drive is driving behavior away from the expression of the current behavior. It's overriding an inclination to stick with a natural behavior of eating the food right in front of your face. This kind of override is a sign of an advanced brain. Primate brains are very good at this kind of economic analysis, and in a variety of settings. A good example comes from the island of Bali in Indonesia. Local primates there have the equivalent skills to the sopranos or the Corleones. In other words, great skills in robbery, barter, and extortion. The monkeys hang out at famous temples, and then when tourists come to see the temples, the monkeys surreptitiously approach. They then steal a personal item, in priority order, a cell phone, sunglasses, or a hat. and then they scamper away. Later, they will trade the personal item for food at a rate that correlates to the value of the personal item. Cell phones get the most, hats the least. So this part of your brain is very, very smart. This part of the primate brain is also present in humans, and how it operates helps us understand some irrational beliefs. In humans, this area of the brain focuses on economic analysis based only on a subset of the available information. Therefore, it is biased. The bias is termed availability bias, and its operation is called the availability heuristic. In essence, this bias leads your brain to believe that the probability of an event is roughly equal to the ease with which you recall the event. 80% of the time, that's a good way to estimate probability. But when the events in your life are not reflective of the overall information in the system, then you get a bad result. Let's take an example. The news. If you keep up with the news, then it's probably mostly negative because, quote, if it bleeds, it leads. So negative news is easy to remember and recall because it's all around us. But that's not what is happening in the world, is ably set forth in these two recent and excellent books. The world overall is getting better, but the availability bias of our brain, conditioned by the focus of the news on the negative, leads us to believe that the world is going to heck. Be aware of this when you consume the news, and your outlook on life will be much more positive if you do. Let's look at the third aspect of foraging behavior. This one is focused attention to a goal several steps away. If you look at the foraging pattern shown on the left, you'll see the monkey troop go under a tree, then go left to a fruit-bearing tree, go under that tree, then towards the right, and then get to the target tree. So there is a particular sequence of behaviors that must be executed to get to the good tree. Can we find cells in the monkey prefrontal cortex that show such sequential behavior? Absolutely, positively, yes. In this series of tasks, a monkey is given a go signal. At that signal, the monkey must perform a sequence of tasks, pulling or pushing or turning a handle. Different monkeys were trained to execute different sequences of tasks to get a reward. Some alternated movements, some paired movements, and some had 4 repeat movements. There were cells that predicted the successful execution of those kinds of sequential behaviors. The top row shows the response to alternate selective behaviors. The middle row is on a paired sequence. And finally, the lowest row is the 4 repeat movements. So we can find a rich complement of cells in the prefrontal cortex that drive sequences of behaviors. They're not associated with any particular response, but associated with the sequence of behaviors. This is significant in the organization of monkey and human behavior. What are the effects when this area of the human brain is damaged by stroke or surgical removal? Well, we study this by constructing a task that is highly dependent upon the sequence of actions. The task shown in this slide is called the Towers of London. There's a similar one called the Towers of Hanoi with circular discs, but this one will suit our purposes quite nicely. The subject is shown an initial configuration of balls on posts, and the task at hand is to produce the target configuration. A solution to puzzle A would be to move the red ball from the shortest pole to the longest pole, and then move the blue ball onto the shortest pole. I'll leave it to you to figure out option B. People with damage to this area of the prefrontal cortex are hopeless at such sequential tasks. They flounder about. They get halfway along a successful sequence of behaviors, and then they abandon it. People with damage in this area of the brain often can't let themselves into their own house. They know they do need to get their keys. They know that they need keys to unlock a door. They know the door will open if it's unlocked, but they can't get the sequence of behaviors down. It creates a very frustrating environment for the human subject and is highly sensitive to sequential changes. So if once the sequence is learned by using other cues, if anything else changes, the whole thing falls apart. The last capability underpinning foraging is the ability to learn abstract categories. We saw that monkeys displayed knowledge of a category of ripe fruit. When they find either one of the fruits shown on the left ripe, they will spontaneously alter their search patterns to incorporate both fruits. How do we study that in the lab? Well, we train monkeys to discriminate between two sets of stimuli. In this example, if the monkey responds to any of the images shown under A1 through A4, the monkey is rewarded with juice. The B stimuli are not rewarded. The monkey reaches a very high level of performance rapidly. They get it quickly. Then we do a nasty trick. We reverse the meaning of the stimuli. B now means reward and A is not rewarded. When this happens, a monkey will have to make a mistake to discover that the meanings have changed. But look closely at what happens next. Performance returns to virtually 100% on the next trial. The monkey has switched the meaning of all images in each category and behaves accordingly. This is very different from a non-primate behavior. A rabbit, for example, will only slowly recover performance in this kind of reversal task. Building categories is a complex behavior for a primate brain. We'll need to focus on two areas to explain this phenomenon. If we take a look at a monkey brain, we find two areas essential for the task. The prefrontal cortex, shown in the upper left, and an area of the brain that we haven't seen until now, the inferior temporal cortex, shown in the lower right. Categories seem to be stored in the inferior temporal cortex under the direction of the prefrontal cortex. We know that because if we separate the connections between the two, then old categories are retained, but new categories are not built. I want to draw your attention to another aspect of categories as shown on this slide. Categories are stored separately depending on one particular dimension, faces. The primate brain is highly sensitive to faces. Faces are subjected to quite a sophisticated analysis. Shown here are recordings from infratemporal cortex neurons as we present various faces to a subject monkey. All cells react strongly initially to faces, but then they show that they're highly tuned to specific configuration of facial features. Some cells are highly sensitive to threat-like displays, those that with open mouth and bared teeth, others to neutral faces. These two expanded brain areas represent an advanced capability of the primate brain. It takes two areas working in concert to build categories. The prefrontal cortex drives the process. The infratemporal cortex stores the categories. The categories represented by the inferior temporal cortex can be quite complex. We can see that from looking at the results of damage to this area in humans. When this area is damaged, the resulting condition is called agnosia. There's two primary categories. In associative agnosia, a patient can reproduce a model drawing but cannot name it. They have a motor program to draw the object using visual input, but they can't associate that visual input with the verbal identification of the object. In perceptive agnosia, the subject can produce the name of the object upon seeing it, but can't produce the motor program to reproduce the object. Agnosia is also different from memory loss. In memory loss, the category memory is irretrievable regardless of the sensory modality. In this instance, the gentleman looking at a set of keys does not know or cannot respond with what they are. When he picks them up, he still doesn't know or can respond with what they are. However, the woman suffering from agnosia recognizes the keys upon picking them up. She would also know how to use them. She can do this using some sense modality other than vision. This can be a great benefit to those with agnosia. For example, when someone cannot recognize the face of a loved one. While the subject visually may not recognize the face, the experience of smelling a particular cologne or watching the subject walk or gesture can bring back a memory of that person. However, this can also mean that the condition can be hard to detect. Other senses can compensate for the presence of agnosia. It's a good time to invite Homer back, and Homer is concerned. He thinks he's got to climb up into a tree and eat fruit to be human. Well, not exactly, but the insight that foraging underpins some of the most dramatic evolution of the brain gives us a new understanding of brain function and recovery. Since humans and monkeys share these areas, research can be accelerated, and that's a very good thing. And our knowledge of these areas is expanding rapidly. Let's turn our attention now to the other impact of expanded capabilities in the primate brain, social cognition. Social cognition is the gaining of benefit by watching, interacting, and/or imitating members of your own or other species. It's a widespread behavior in animals. However, this capability has reached its peak in primates and humans. We know that because social cognition in primates has attained the level of soap operas. Time will not permit us to look at all the aspects of social cognition or expound on the points elaborated in this quote, but we can hit some of the highlights of its development and a couple of quintessential capabilities. Primate social cognition seems to develop in three overall phases. Unsurprisingly, in the first phase, aptly known as Mother Knows Best, infants benefit from observing and imitating dear old mom. In the example on the slide, an infant is learning that mom knows just what foods to eat and what to avoid. The second phase represents juveniles learning from the best dude in the troop. Here a young monkey is learning how to crack nuts from the best nutcracker in the home troop. These experiences seem to introduce the category of us to the young monkey. The home troop is an in-group to which the monkey belongs. In most monkey troops, when males reach adulthood, they migrate to a new troop. This migration helps minimize inbreeding and its deleterious effects. So the third phase of social learning is easiest to see in migrated adult males, but it's present in all adults. In this phase, conformity to the group norms seem to dominate. The slide shows an example of this. An adult male who as a juvenile learned that his home troop, his us, consumed blue corn, rapidly switches to the preferred corn color of his new group, red corn. We'll study the implications of this in a later seminar. For now, I want to focus on a particular behavior clearly shown to underpin such social learning. Imitation. It's a widespread behavior in animals. However, this capability reaches its peak in primates and humans. If you don't believe me, just take a look at these two gorillas in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They have learned to imitate the pose of rangers when the rangers pose for selfies. In this section, we'll look at the fundamental aspects of imitation, and by looking at these fundamentals, we can increase our understanding of our brain and its underpinnings of human society. Imitation consists of three essential capabilities. The first is to determine what to imitate. The world of a primate is a target-rich environment. What in that environment should be chosen to imitate? The second is to determine how to imitate. What are the muscle movements or motor programs that need to be executed in order to imitate a given behavior? What about the intention of that behavior? And the third is to get rewarded for imitating. There must be a reinforcer here, either the direct consummation of a reward or the avoidance of danger. Sometimes simply looking at something is rewarding in and of itself. This macaque in a hot bath in Japan shouldn't be looking at a mobile phone, but it clearly finds this a rewarding experience. What could he be looking at? There's a clear prioritization of objects that your brain analyzes when determining what to imitate. The clear winner of that prioritization scheme is faces. Here are recordings from neurons in the temporal lobe as they were presented cartoon outlines of faces. The faces vary on 37 different dimensions. Different neurons are tuned to different dimensions. The neuron shown on the bottom of the slide is sensitive to face aspect ratio, that's the ratio of face length to width, inter-eye distance, the eye aspect ratio, that's the ratio of eye length to eye width, and the iris size. Neurons analyze faces mapped to these dimensions with tremendous specificity. So one of the first things your brain does in analyzing objects in the environment is to determine what object is a face, and after that, what are the specifics of that face per these dimensions. Once your brain has determined an object has a face, it will subject the object to further analysis. The essential question being, is it attached to something alive? What? How does your brain determine something is alive? Well, it evaluates the object on the dimension of biological motion. Biological motion is far easier to show than describe, so let's take a set of lights. If those lights move in a certain way, your brain is hardwired to interpret the movement of the lights as an individual walking. Your brain interprets the lights as being attached to joints on the arms and the legs. If we look at a different pattern of lights, we can see the dude doing a little dance. Your brain will infer emotional states and even gender from such patterns of movement. Can we see neurons in monkeys which detect such movement? Yes. We show monkeys a set of lights under two conditions. One pattern of light represents the movement of joints and limbs that could be associated with a monkey walking down a path. The other pattern of lights is a random scrambling of light movement. The actual movement of the lights in each case is the same. We find brain cells that are highly attuned to only biological motion. That is, they react to the movement of lights that can represent joint movement, not random movement. That is one way your brain determines something is alive and potentially worth imitating. The existence of brain cells that determine it's alive for objects could be used to explain a very surprising encounter people have on safaris in Africa. Here is an example from one Becky and I took in 2017. We were amazed how close the animals got to the vehicles. Let me show you a quick example. This leopard walked right under the feet of the tracker on the front of the Jeep. I believe it was because the leopard did not detect biological motion of the Jeep. We were some kind of big rock or something like that. Given that we were a rock, it was okay to walk closely by it, because the leopard just did not detect any biological motion of limbs from the Jeep. Further proof of this theory was given when someone stood up in the Jeep and moved their limbs. A close-by lion really noticed. Needless to say, they sat down quickly and quietly. The part of your brain that subjects objects to analysis and looks for special aspects of faces is the inferotemporal cortex, shown within the red circle. Some people call this area of the brain the object analyzer. It breaks down objects into various categories where faces and alive things are special categories. This part of the brain then represents that information to other parts of the brain. Other people call this area of the brain the what system. It's basically the part of your brain that subjects objects to analysis, forms categories about those objects, and then provides that analysis to other parts of your brain. The prefrontal cortex, for example, uses this analysis for strategy selection and valuation. This is an extremely important part of your brain overall, and it's absolutely essential in terms of determining who to imitate. Once a primate brain has determined a who to imitate, it will then proceed to determine how to imitate. The simplest way for a primate brain to determine how to imitate is to follow the gaze of an alive face. The brain does this so quickly, the assumption is that it does so reflexively, and we can show that in an experiment. In this experiment, we're going to have a monkey fixated upon an object, and then we're going to show them a cue. That cue is a monkey face looking either to the right or to the left. After that, we're going to show the monkey a target. The target could be on the left or the target could be on the right. The monkey must visually follow the target. If we show the target on the left, the monkey must move his eyes to the left. If we show him the target on the right, the monkey must quickly look to the right. Note that the gaze of the cue monkey could be the same or different to the side on which the target appears. If they're different, it's called incongruent, and if they're the same, it's called congruent. If we measure the response time of looking, we find that it takes far longer in the incongruent condition. That's because the brain of the monkey had analyzed the gaze of the cue monkey in less than 1/10 of a second, determined the direction of gaze, and started the eyes moving in that direction, when all of a sudden we show a targeted face for the opposite side. The monkey has got to course correct and look back the opposite way. That takes a lot more time than the congruent condition when no course correction is needed. This gaze following happens so fast it seems to be reflexive. So your brain is wired to 1. Analyze objects that are alive faces, 2. Determine the direction of gaze of that alive face, and 3. Follow that direction of gaze. After that, your brain then subjects any movement observed to intention analysis. Let's look at that next. This kind of analysis is performed by mirror cells. We saw them in 7R1. To briefly review their function, mirror cells encode the goal of a motor act. Look at the quadrants of this figure. We see brain recording histograms of a single mirror cell below a cartoon figure representing a movement. Sections 1 and 3 show that this particular mirror cell encodes for grasping to eat. It fires when the monkey observes a human grasping a food object and bringing it to her mouth, as well as when the monkey grabs a food object and brings it to its own mouth. Sections 2 and 4 show that the mirror cell does not react to grabbing motions per se, either performed or observed. I want to stress that this analysis here is on the motor goal, bringing food to mouth, and not the internal state of the person or animal observed, that is to say, whether they're hungry or not. The mirror cell attempts to drive execution of a motor object, not to understand the motivation of the observed. This will be a very important point in our next lecture on human unique brain capabilities. Having found the who to imitate and then analyzing the how to imitate, and then actually doing the motor object the who was doing, do we get rewarded? Yes. Not only can performing the motor object get us a reinforcer, just looking can be reinforcing. In essence, your brain is enjoying the view. We can show this in an experiment. The task is a saccade test. The monkey must glance to one of 2 targets, T1 or T2, by his own choice. Either choice is rewarded by juice. However, one of the targets is paired with the image of a monkey. It could be a face, it could be of a body part. We're interested in the equivalence between the juice and the juice plus a monkey body part. If viewing a body part, for example a face, is rewarding, then we'd have to pair it with less juice to get equivalent behavior to just juice alone. If viewing is not rewarding, then we'll have to overpay with juice to get the monkey to look the same number of times than for just juice alone. We study the area of the brain called the parietal lobe, shown here. And we show not just monkey faces, but other parts of a monkey, and we get some very interesting results. There were 2 monkeys in this study. One is represented by solid bars, and the other is represented by outline bars. When we pair the juice with a picture of a subordinate monkey, the picture of the subordinate monkey is unpleasant. We have to overpay in juice to get the monkey to look at a subordinate monkey. But looking at a gray square is neutral, no need to overpay with juice. But if we use a picture of a dominant monkey's face, we find looking at it rewarding. We use less juice to get the monkey to look in that direction. And then finally, the most rewarding view was that of the hindquarters of a female monkey, and I will note that the subjects were both males, and I will leave it at that. It's time now for Homer to weigh in on a summary set of observations. The first thing Homer would say is, "Wow, I had no idea my brain was so into faces and gaze. Facial analysis, determining what's alive, using target gaze to set the stage for imitation are all fundamental activities of your brain in everyday life and in the creation of culture. When those circuits go awry, they result in social complications like autism spectrum disorder and many others." The second observation from Homer is that monkey see, monkey do is actually a positive statement. Imitation is a fundamental tool of teaching pedagogy and cultural transmission. Imitation is not unique to primates. Remember meerkat kindergarten? Primates, however, take the fundamentals of imitation, facial and gaze analysis, to new levels of sophistication, and that helps set the stage for the unique aspects of human culture. In our last section, we'll look a bit more deeply at reasoning and social cognition in primates. Once, these 2 behaviors were thought to be uniquely differentiable to humans. But today, we know that we share many of these traits with our evolutionary ancestors. But we can set the stage for one capability and brain area that does seem unique to humans. Let's put that into context first. The primate non-human brain can be shown to be adept at semantic analysis, understanding the meaning of arbitrary symbols. We can show that in the following experiment. The concept of number is represented both by the dots on the left and the Arabic numerals on the right. We're going to train a monkey to appropriately pair them, 1 with 1 dot, 2 with 2 dots, and so on. Then we're going to investigate the prefrontal cortex of the monkey to see if we can find representations of numbers in that area of the brain. We show a neuron from that prefrontal cortex that is attuned to the numerality of 2. It responds significantly stronger to both the dots and the shape of the number 2. Corresponding neurons can be found for 1, 3, and 4. This is not only the place that can show semantic analysis of number, but it shows you a good general characterization. A primate non-human brain can exhibit the concept of number in semantic analysis. So this is clearly not human unique. What about semantic reasoning? A primate non-human brain can be shown to be rich in nonverbal reasoning. Typically, this capability is called following a rule. A familiar rule would be same or different. Again, we're studying the primate frontal cortex, and that's shown in the circle diagram on the right. We can show both that the behavior of a monkey and neurons in her prefrontal cortex understand the concept of same and different. Some examples are on the left. The task diagram is shown on the top. The main challenge is to show that the neurons respond to the rule, not the motor act or the objects. The histograms on the bottom show a single neuron encoding same across different objects, cups, toys, etc., and different responses, release or hold. Clearly, these neuronal responses are learned. There are few coffee cups and toy spaceships in the wild. So nonverbal semantic reasoning is not human unique. What about verbal semantic reasoning? Semantic reasoning almost certainly involves language, and to date, verbal reasoning has been found to be human unique. Here's an example. You might want to recall your SAT, ACT tests for college. The statement on the slide is read, "A bird is to a horse like an airplane is to a car." Is that a true or a false statement? And why? It's true in the sense that birds and horses move, birds fly and horses move on the ground, airplanes and cars move, airplanes fly and cars move on the ground, so I vote true. To answer this question, the meanings of the symbol categories and their relationships need to be decoded and compared. Language most assuredly plays a part in this kind of reasoning. No animal subject has been shown reliably to exhibit such reasoning, and we will look more closely at this in the next seminar. That's not to say non-human primates are social nitwits. They, as a species, display an admirable range of exemplary social behavior. For example, altruism and fairness. Let's take one example from marmosets, the cute little dudes we see here. Marmosets are cooperative breeders, and by that I mean the infants receive care not just from their parents, but other helpers in the group. This is different than chimpanzees and other apes, but they're not alone in this in the animal world. Meerkats, magpies, wolves, and foxes are known to be cooperative breeders. Now, in several experiments, marmosets can be shown to be altruistic. They will work to give food to another hungry member of the group, whether or not they're related or paired. This is an advanced behavior, and the social circuits of the brain make this possible. Note that this is not shown in all primate species. There's a subtle difference between the brains of those who do and those who don't show the behavior. Research is active into what those differences are. Non-human primates can not only display altruism, but they also have a keen sense of fairness, which springs from these same circuits. The best way to show this is with a video. Here the renowned researcher Frans de Waal, author of the book Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are?, describes and demonstrates in a very famous experiment.
So a final experiment that I want to mention to you is our fairness study. And so this became a very famous study, and there's now many more, because after we did this about 10 years ago, it became very well known. And we did that originally with capuchin monkeys, and I'm going to show you the first experiment that we did. It has now been done with dogs, and with birds, and with chimpanzees. But with Sarah Brosnan, we started out with capuchin monkeys. So what we did is we put two capuchin monkeys side by side. Again, these animals, they live in a group. They know each other. We take them out of the group, put them in a test chamber. And there's a very simple task that they need to do. And if you give both of them cucumber for the task, the two monkeys side by side, they're perfectly willing to do this 25 times in a row. So cucumber, even though it's really only water in my opinion, but cucumber is perfectly fine for them. Now, if you give the partner grapes, the food preferences of my capuchin monkeys correspond exactly with the prices in the supermarket. And so if you give them grapes, it's a far better food, then you create inequity between them. So that's the experiment we did. Recently, we videotaped it with new monkeys who had never done the task, thinking that maybe they would have a stronger reaction, and that turned out to be right. The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber, and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again. So this is basically the Wall Street protest that you see here.
I hope these videos give you some insight into just how complex the social capabilities of primates are. There's one more behavior that I want to present: cooperation. Here you see a picture of an experiment where 3 chimpanzees had to cooperate to receive a reward. They had to work together or it didn't work. Sometimes all 3 had to work. Sometimes 2 of the 3 could accomplish the task. There were some very surprising results from the experiment. First, maximum cooperation required punishment. Initially, most chimps tended to cooperate, but without punishment, cooperation declined over time. The punishment addressed freeloaders, that is, chimps who didn't have to work but received a reward. Once a chimp became known as a freeloader, chimps would avoid them if at all possible. If the freeloader could not be avoided, then the other chimps would purposefully not work to receive a reward, so that the offending freeloader wouldn't get anything. This is called altruistic punishment, since the punishers are hurting themselves to punish someone else. Strange as it may seem, such behavior is widely expressed in living creatures. Plants have been shown to punish bacteria. Fish have been shown to punish cleaner fish who do not do their work. But on the positive side, as long as there is punishment in the system, at the end of the day, when the behavior has reached steady state, cooperation is 5 times greater than competition. That's a very positive statement about the primate brain and your brain. But do humans and non-human primates actually share all the same capabilities in social cognition? No. It's probably easiest to explain with a story in the context of a social dilemma. Suppose you go to the farmer's market and you see your favorite vendor at his usual stall. He usually gives you a discount if you're friendly to him. Lately his fruit hasn't been that good, and today there's a new vendor next to him with fantastic looking fruit. What's going through your mind? That looks good, but I know if I go to the new vendor, my old vendor will be upset. He may not give me the best fruit anymore, or a discount. The new vendor looks very nice and friendly. She might give me better service and fruit. but I'm afraid of upsetting my good old fruit vendor. Oh, what will they think? And why are these things so complicated? To make a good choice in this situation, a human uses brain circuits that identify social contexts, makes inferences on the mental states of others and the likely actions of others, and estimates cost and benefits of different transactions, makes a decision, and learns from the result. It's enough to make you want a drink of wine. Well, primates have a very similar brain circuit and use them in similar situations. The primate we see here is trying to decide about cooperating with another male or helping care for the offspring of a female member of his group. Different payoffs and benefits in a social decision context for both. So in many ways, these are shared brain systems with one major exception. Only the human has a brain area called the temporoparietal junction. We'll see in the next lecture what that means for a range of human behaviors. For now, it suffices to say that you are aware of what the other vendors might be thinking, and you will take that into account. Primates do not. They can be empathetic to other primates, but a large volume of research says that they do not think deeply about the mental states of others prior to making a decision. Time for Homer. Homer says two things. The first is, seems to me that a primate brain is pretty smart and social. Here Homer is talking about non-human primates. Many of the skills and capabilities that we might think are human unique are present in our evolutionary ancestors. Now those capabilities may or may not be typically shown in the wild, but they're readily apparent in the laboratory. That means non-human primate brains have capabilities foreshadowing human capabilities. The human species evolved with inherited capabilities, perhaps not readily apparent from primate ancestors, but which could be rapidly used once certain triggering events occurred. We'll see the impact of this in the next seminar. The second of Homer's points is you've got to be careful on the interpretation of complex skills. It's very, very common for humans to ascribe intentions to the acts they observe. An animal may just be imitating an act with little intention other than to just enjoy the view. We need to be careful on this and not let one of our unique human skills cloud our observations of animals' behavior. This concludes the seminar. I hope you enjoyed it. In Seminar 5, we'll look at human brains in all their glory. The goal of the seminar will be to investigate and present the unique abilities of human brains that give rise to the vibrant culture around us. I tried to pick one item that could represent that culture, and I came up with Switched on Bach. Not only is this album an example of classical music of great beauty, it's also an example of a technology achievement, the Moog synthesizer. Here is a marriage of technology and classic culture is extending the beauty of music in one unique package. What kind of brain could produce this kind of object? It turns out that there's a unique underlying capability that is essential into the production of such an object, and it's represented by this film.